Before we begin, I want to ask you one question. When was the last time you made a decision that was completely for yourself, not to impress someone, not to avoid disappointing someone, not to gain someone's approval, just for you? If you cannot remember, then this video may change the way you see your entire life, because most people do not lose themselves overnight. They lose themselves one small compromise at a time. One forced smile, one silent sacrifice, one comparison, one search for approval, one yes when their heart wanted to say no, until one day they wake up living a life that no longer feels like their own. They know what everyone else expects. They know how to keep everyone else happy. They know how to avoid conflict, but they no longer know themselves. And that is one of the greatest forms of suffering. Buddha taught that the moment you stop looking outside for your worth and begin looking within, everything changes. Your peace returns. Your mind becomes lighter. Your heart becomes quieter. And for the first time in a very long time, you stop living for the world and start living from your true self. Tonight, let's begin that journey together. You cannot hear your inner voice above the noise of other people. Long before people lose themselves externally, they lose themselves internally. It rarely happens all at once. You do not wake up one morning and suddenly forget who you are. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. It happens through distraction, through constant exposure to opinions, through seeking advice from everyone while never consulting your own wisdom. At first, it appears harmless. You ask people what they think. You seek reassurance. You look for guidance. You simply want to make the right decision. You want to avoid mistakes. You want certainty. There is nothing wrong with learning from others. Buddhism never teaches us to reject wisdom. But problems begin when other people's voices become louder than our own awareness. Eventually, you stop trusting your own judgment altogether. You hesitate before making simple decisions. You question your instincts. You second-guess your desires. You wonder whether your dreams are practical enough, acceptable enough, impressive enough. You ask yourself questions like, what if people disagree? What if they think I'm selfish? What if they don't understand? What if I disappoint them? Little by little, fear replaces clarity. Without realizing it, you have handed authority over your life to voices outside yourself. You begin living according to expectations instead of truth. You choose what is admired instead of what feels meaningful. You choose what keeps people comfortable instead of what keeps your soul alive. Buddha encouraged observation, not blind obedience, not imitation. Observation. He invited people to look directly into their own experience, to notice what creates peace, to notice what creates suffering, to become deeply aware of their thoughts, actions, and intentions. Because wisdom cannot simply be borrowed, it must be lived. No one can eat food on your behalf and remove your hunger. No one can breathe on your behalf and keep you alive. And no one can walk your inner path for you. Many people today have become strangers to silence. The moment they feel uncertain, they seek another opinion. The moment they feel discomfort, they distract themselves. The moment they feel loneliness, they fill the emptiness with noise. They scroll endlessly. They consume endless advice. They compare their lives to strangers. They ask everyone what they should do, but they rarely pause long enough to ask themselves, because silence can feel uncomfortable. In silence, there are no distractions, no applause, no outside validation, only you. And many people spend their entire lives avoiding that meeting, but your deepest truth rarely shouts. It whispers. It speaks softly through intuition, through longing, through peace, through subtle knowing. Sometimes it appears as a quiet excitement you cannot explain. Sometimes it appears as a persistent dream that refuses to leave your heart. Sometimes it appears as an uncomfortable feeling that tells you something is not right, even when everyone else says it is. Your inner voice often speaks in gentle ways. But because the world is so loud, we ignore it. And if your mind is constantly crowded with the expectations, judgments, and fears of others, you may never hear it. You may spend decades building a life that looks successful from the outside, while feeling empty within. You may achieve everything you thought you were supposed to achieve, and still wonder why joy never arrived. You may become the person everyone praises, while secretly grieving the person you abandoned. Not because you chose wrongly, but because you never paused long enough to ask yourself what truly mattered to you. Many people spend years climbing ladders they never wanted to climb, working for approval they never truly needed, chasing versions of success they never personally defined. Then one day they ask themselves, "How did I get here?" The answer is often painful. By listening to everyone except themselves. There is a difference between guidance and dependence. Guidance illuminates. Dependence replaces. Guidance says, "Learn from others, but remain awake." Dependence says, "Other people know me better than I know myself." And many people mistake the two. They believe everyone else knows better. They assume other people understand their path more clearly than they do. They trust the crowd more than their own awareness. But nobody else has lived inside your heart. Nobody else has carried your exact fears. Nobody else has survived your exact struggles. Nobody else has felt your hidden hopes. Nobody else has been entrusted with your particular journey. People may offer advice. They may share wisdom, but they cannot become your inner compass. That responsibility belongs to you. The truth is that your inner voice has not disappeared. It has simply become buried beneath years of noise, beneath criticism, beneath comparison, beneath expectations, beneath fear, beneath the desire to be liked, beneath the habit of putting everyone else's needs before your own truth. And perhaps this is why so many people feel lost, not because they lack direction, not because they are broken, not because they are incapable, but because they have stopped listening. The good news is this: your inner wisdom is patient. It has waited through every season of confusion. It has watched you chase approval. It has watched you shrink yourself to fit into places that were too small for who you truly are. It has watched you betray your own needs just to avoid rejection. It has watched you doubt what you already knew. And still, it remains, waiting, not angry, not demanding perfection, only attention. It does not ask you to have everything figured out. It simply asks you to come back, to slow down, to become present, to listen again. The journey back to yourself does not begin with finding new answers. It begins with becoming quiet enough to hear the answers that have been within you all along. For the first time in a very long time, ask yourself, what do I truly want? Not my family, not society, not the people I fear disappointing, not the version of me that seeks approval. What do I want when no one is watching? What brings me peace? What feels true in my heart? What kind of life would I choose if I stopped being afraid of judgment? Do not rush to answer. Sit with the question. Let the silence teach you, because somewhere beneath all the noise, beneath all the roles you have learned to play, beneath all the masks you have worn to survive, beneath all the expectations you have carried for years, there is a voice that still remembers who you are. a voice untouched by comparison, a voice untouched by fear. A voice that has quietly guided you since the beginning, and perhaps the greatest act of courage is not becoming someone new. Perhaps the greatest act of courage is choosing to trust that voice again, to trust yourself again, to return to the person you were before the world convinced you that everyone else's opinion mattered more than your own truth. Comparison quietly steals your identity. One of the most painful ways people lose themselves is through comparison. Not because comparison is loud, but because it is silent. It enters the mind unnoticed. It disguises itself as motivation, as self-improvement, as inspiration. But over time, it slowly changes the way you see yourself. You stop looking at your life through the eyes of gratitude and begin looking at it through the eyes of lack. Suddenly, what you have no longer feels enough. Who you are no longer feels enough. Where you are no longer feels enough. You begin measuring your entire existence against other people. You compare your appearance, your achievements, your relationships, your career, your financial situation, your healing journey, your family, your talents, your age, your progress, even your happiness. You see someone getting married and wonder why love has not found you yet. You see someone succeeding and question your own worth. You see someone confident and begin criticizing yourself. You see someone living the life you once dreamed of and quietly ask, "What is wrong with me?" Without realizing it, comparison changes your relationship with yourself. You stop celebrating your own growth. You stop appreciating how far you have come. You stop noticing your strengths. Instead, you focus entirely on what you think is missing. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that suffering often begins when the mind refuses to accept the reality of this moment. The mind says, "I will be enough when I become like them. I will be happy when my life looks like theirs. I will finally feel worthy when I have what they have." But this way of thinking creates endless dissatisfaction, because there will always be someone richer, someone younger, someone more attractive, someone more successful, someone more admired, someone who seems to have everything you believe you lack. If your peace depends on being better than everyone else, peace will always remain out of reach. Comparison creates a race that has no finish line. You run harder, you achieve more, you gain recognition, yet the mind immediately finds another person to compete with, another reason to feel behind, another excuse to reject yourself. This is why comparison becomes exhausting, because it teaches you that your value is conditional. It tells you that you must earn the right to love yourself, that who you are today is not enough. But think about nature. A rose does not wake up wishing it were a lotus. The moon does not compare itself to the sun. The ocean does not envy the mountains. The stars do not compete with the sky. Each simply fulfills its own nature. Each has its own purpose, its own beauty, its own timing. Human beings are perhaps the only creatures who abandon their own path because they become obsessed with someone else's. Buddha taught that attachment creates suffering. Comparison is attachment in disguise. It is attachment to an imagined version of how your life should look. It is resistance toward the life unfolding before you. You become so focused on another person's chapter that you stop reading your own story. You forget that people show you their highlights while hiding their struggles. The smiling couple may be carrying silent pain. The successful person may battle deep loneliness. The confident individual may secretly feel inadequate. The life you envy may contain burdens you cannot see. But the comparing mind never notices this. It only notices what appears perfect. It creates stories. It creates fantasies. It creates the illusion that everyone else has figured life out while you remain behind. And slowly, you begin betraying yourself. You change the way you dress, the way you speak, the dreams you pursue, the choices you make, not because they are true to you, but because they seem more acceptable, more admired, more likely to earn approval. You start shaping yourself according to standards that were never designed for your soul. And this is where identity begins to disappear. Because every time you reject who you naturally are in order to imitate someone else, you send yourself a painful message. You are not enough as you are. Imagine hearing those words every single day. Eventually, you begin to believe them. You stop trusting your gifts. You stop honoring your pace. You stop respecting your unique journey. You forget that your life was never meant to look exactly like another person's. Some flowers bloom in spring. Others bloom in autumn. Some trees grow quickly. Others spend years developing deep roots before they rise. Neither is failing. Neither is late. Neither has missed its purpose. They simply unfold according to their nature. Perhaps you are not behind. Perhaps you are growing in ways you cannot yet see. Perhaps the delays in your life are preparing you, strengthening you, teaching you lessons that cannot be rushed. The comparing mind sees delay as failure. The wise mind sees timing. It understands that life is not a competition. It is a journey of awakening, a journey of becoming more fully yourself. And maybe the greatest tragedy is not failing to become extraordinary. Maybe the greatest tragedy is spending your entire life trying to become someone else, while the person you were born to be remains undiscovered. You were never created to copy another human being. You were never meant to walk their exact path. You were never meant to wear their dreams as your own. You came into this world carrying a different heart, different lessons, different struggles, different gifts, different purposes. The moment you stop fighting your uniqueness, peace begins to return. The moment you stop measuring your worth against another person's journey, gratitude begins to grow. The moment you stop asking, "Why am I not them?" you finally begin asking, "Who am I becoming?" That question changes everything, because comparison asks you to abandon yourself. Awareness invites you to return to your own life. Return to your own values. Return to your own pace. Return to your own truth. There is no one else in this world who can fulfill your purpose exactly as you can. No one else can live your life for you. No one else can discover the wisdom hidden inside your experiences. No one else can become the person you are capable of becoming. Stop using another person's journey as evidence that you are failing. Their path is theirs. Your path is yours. And perhaps peace begins the moment you understand this simple truth. You do not need to become someone else to be worthy. You do not need to catch up to deserve happiness. You do not need to prove your value by outperforming the people around you. You already possess value simply because you exist. Your task is not to become a better version of someone else. Your task is to become the truest version of yourself. And the more you honor that truth, the less power comparison has to steal your identity. Because the person meant to live your life has been you all along. Seeking approval creates invisible chains. One of the deepest human desires is the desire to be accepted, to belong, to be understood, to feel valued. There is nothing wrong with wanting love. There is nothing wrong with wanting connection. Human beings were never meant to live completely alone. From the moment we enter this world, we depend on others. As children, approval often meant safety. A parent's smile made us feel secure. Praise made us feel seen. Encouragement made us feel worthy. Acceptance brought comfort. Rejection brought pain. Without realizing it, the mind began forming a powerful belief. If people approve of me, I am safe. If people reject me, something must be wrong with me. As children, this way of thinking helped us survive. But many people carry this pattern into adulthood, even when they no longer need it. They become adults whose entire identity depends on how others respond to them. They constantly ask themselves, do they like me? Did I say the wrong thing? What if they are upset with me? What if they misunderstand me? What if they stop loving me? What if they think I am selfish? Slowly, life stops becoming about authenticity and becomes about performance. You stop asking, is this true to who I am? And start asking, will people approve of this version of me? Without noticing it, you begin editing yourself. You hide certain opinions. You suppress certain emotions. You silence certain dreams. You laugh when something is not funny. You agree when your heart says no. You apologize for things that require no apology. You become smaller, softer, more acceptable. You become whatever version of yourself receives the least resistance. At first, this seems harmless. It feels kind. It feels mature. It feels loving. But eventually, something inside you becomes exhausted, because pretending is exhausting. Wearing masks is exhausting. Living for applause is exhausting. Trying to satisfy everyone's expectations is exhausting, because no matter how hard you try, it will never be enough. Someone will still misunderstand you. Someone will still criticize you. Someone will still judge you. Someone will still be disappointed. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. You can spend your entire life trying to please everyone and still fail. Buddha taught that attachment is one of the roots of suffering. Most people think of attachment only in terms of relationships or possessions, but approval is another form of attachment, perhaps one of the strongest. Because when you become attached to praise, criticism gains the power to destroy your peace. When compliments define your worth, rejection begins to define your identity. A single negative comment can ruin your entire day. One person's disappointment can make you question yourself. One criticism can silence your confidence. Why? Because you have placed your value into hands that were never meant to hold it. The truth is that other people's opinions constantly change. People praise you one day and criticize you the next. They celebrate you when you meet their expectations. They withdraw when you don't. Some people love the version of you that benefits them, but become uncomfortable when you begin honoring yourself. If your identity depends on external approval, your peace becomes unstable. Because you are building your self-worth on something you cannot control. Imagine trying to build a house on moving sand. No matter how beautiful the house appears, it cannot provide security. Eventually, it begins to crack. This is what happens when your self-worth depends entirely on validation. You begin abandoning yourself to avoid losing others. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You tolerate disrespect because you fear being alone. You remain silent because speaking honestly feels dangerous. You continue relationships that drain you because rejection feels unbearable. You become loyal to other people's comfort while betraying your own truth. Over time, resentment quietly grows. You start feeling unseen, unappreciated, exhausted. Yet deep down, another truth emerges. People cannot appreciate a version of you they have never truly met. Because if you constantly hide who you are, they only know your performance, not your authentic self. This creates one of life's deepest loneliness. being surrounded by people while feeling unknown, being loved for the mask while the real you remains hidden. Buddhist wisdom invites us to examine this attachment carefully. Why do we need everyone to approve of us? Why does disagreement feel threatening? Why do we fear disappointing others so deeply? Often, beneath people-pleasing lies fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. Fear that if people truly knew us, they would leave. But genuine connection cannot grow where authenticity does not exist. True relationships require truth, not perfection, not constant agreement. Truth. The people who are meant to remain in your life will not require you to abandon yourself to earn their love. Healthy love does not demand self-betrayal. Healthy love makes space for honesty, for boundaries, for differences, for individuality. You are allowed to disagree. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to choose a different path. You are allowed to disappoint people. This does not make you selfish. It makes you human. Many people spend decades trying to become acceptable to everyone, only to realize they never became acceptable to themselves. And perhaps this is the greatest loss of all. Because if gaining approval requires losing yourself, the price is too high. Freedom begins the moment you understand that your worth cannot be voted on by other people. It cannot be increased by praise. It cannot be reduced by criticism. It cannot be measured by popularity. It cannot be decided by strangers. Your worth existed before anyone applauded you, before anyone approved of you, before anyone understood you, before anyone believed in you. You were worthy when you were struggling. You were worthy when you made mistakes. You were worthy when you disappointed others. You were worthy when you disappointed yourself. Nothing outside of you has the power to remove that truth. The goal is not to stop caring about people. Compassion matters. Kindness matters. Love matters. But there is a difference between caring about people and surrendering yourself to them. One is love. The other is fear. The moment you stop asking, "What do I need to become so everyone will accept me?" and begin asking, "Who am I when I no longer need permission to be myself?" everything changes. Because freedom is not found in universal approval. Freedom is found in self-respect, in authenticity, in the quiet courage to stand in your truth, even when not everyone understands it. And perhaps awakening begins when you finally realize this. You were never born to spend your entire life auditioning for acceptance. You were born to know yourself, to honor yourself, to live truthfully, and to stop placing the key to your peace in other people's hands. People-pleasing is self-abandonment in disguise. Some of the kindest people in the world are also the most exhausted, not because they do too little, but because they give too much. They are the ones who answer every call, the ones who always understand, the ones who make excuses for people who hurt them, the ones who stay patient long after they have been disrespected, the ones who carry everyone's burdens while quietly ignoring their own pain. From the outside, they appear strong, compassionate, selfless, reliable. Everyone praises them for being such a good person. But beneath that kindness, there is often a silent sadness, a deep exhaustion that nobody sees, because somewhere along the way, they learned a dangerous lesson, that being needed is the same as being loved. That sacrificing themselves is the price of acceptance. That saying yes makes them valuable, and saying no makes them selfish. So they continue giving. Even when they are empty, they continue helping. Even when they are overwhelmed, they continue understanding others. even when nobody tries to understand them, and little by little they disappear. People-pleasing rarely begins with bad intentions. It usually begins with love. As children, many people discovered that keeping others happy brought safety. If they behaved well, they received praise. If they avoided conflict, they avoided rejection. If they met expectations, they felt accepted. Slowly, the mind created another belief. My needs are less important. I must earn love by being useful. I must avoid disappointing people. If someone is unhappy with me, I have failed. These beliefs follow people into adulthood. They become adults who apologize for taking up space, who feel guilty resting, who feel responsible for everyone else's emotions, who cannot relax unless everyone around them is comfortable. They become experts at reading other people's needs, yet strangers to their own. Have you ever noticed how quickly you respond when someone else needs something? But how often do you ignore your own exhaustion? How many times have you said yes when every part of you wanted to say no? How many times have you stayed silent to avoid upsetting someone? How many times have you abandoned your truth just to keep the peace? Perhaps more times than you can count. At first, it feels noble. You tell yourself, I am just being kind. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want conflict. I just want everyone to be happy. But Buddhism teaches us to look deeper. Because intention matters, and beneath many acts of people-pleasing, there is not compassion. There is fear, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of criticism, fear of disappointing others, fear that if you stop giving, people will stop loving you, fear that your worth depends on how useful you are. This fear becomes exhausting, because no matter how much you give, it never feels enough. Someone always needs more. Someone always expects more. Someone always asks for more. And because you struggle to create boundaries, you continue sacrificing yourself, until resentment quietly begins to grow. You start feeling unseen, taken for granted, invisible. You wonder, why does nobody care for me the way I care for them? Why am I always the one giving? Why do I feel so lonely even when I am surrounded by people? The answer can be painful, because sometimes you have trained people to expect access to parts of you that even you no longer protect. You have taught others that your time is always available. Your energy is always available. Your peace is always negotiable, not because they demanded it, but because you believed love required it. The truth is this: compassion does not require self-destruction. Kindness does not require self-abandonment. Love does not require suffering. Buddha never taught people to disappear for others. He taught the middle way: balance, wisdom, awareness, a compassion that includes all beings, including yourself. You matter too. Your feelings matter too. Your exhaustion matters too. Your needs matter too. You were never meant to save everyone while losing yourself in the process. Think about how naturally you comfort those you love. You tell them to rest. You encourage them to take care of themselves. You remind them that they deserve peace. You forgive their mistakes. You offer understanding. But why is it so difficult to extend that same compassion inward? Why do you expect perfection from yourself while offering patience to everyone else? Why do you allow others to be human while denying your own humanity? People-pleasers often believe they must be endlessly available, always understanding, always forgiving, always accommodating. But this creates relationships built on imbalance. People begin loving what you provide rather than who you are. They become attached to your constant sacrifice. And when you finally speak up, when you finally set a boundary, when you finally choose yourself, some people become uncomfortable, not because you have changed, but because they benefited from the version of you that had no limits. This can be heartbreaking. You may feel guilty. You may question yourself. You may wonder if you are becoming selfish. But choosing yourself is not selfish. Ignoring your own humanity is not kindness. Healthy love has room for boundaries. Healthy love respects limits. Healthy love does not demand that one person disappear so another can remain comfortable. The people who truly love you may not always agree with your boundaries, but they will learn to respect them. Because real love does not ask you to betray yourself. It invites you to bring your whole self into the relationship, the honest self, the tired self, the imperfect self, the self that sometimes says no, the self that has needs, the self that deserves rest. Perhaps one of the most healing sentences you can learn is this: I can disappoint others and still be a good person. Read that again. You can disappoint others and still be loving. You can disappoint others and still be kind. You can disappoint others and still be worthy. Because your purpose in this life is not to become everything for everyone. It is not your responsibility to carry every burden. It is not your duty to rescue every person at the expense of your own well-being. Your responsibility is to live with awareness, with compassion, with wisdom. And that compassion must include the person you see in the mirror, the one who has been ignored, the one who has been overworked, the one who has been told to wait, the one who keeps sacrificing while hoping someone will finally choose them. Perhaps the person who needs your kindness most is you. Perhaps the person waiting for your love is you. Perhaps the person you have abandoned while trying to save everyone else is you. The greatest tragedy is not being disliked by others. The greatest tragedy is becoming so committed to keeping everyone else happy that you forget how to care for your own soul. So stop asking, "What must I do so nobody is disappointed with me?" And begin asking, "What do I need in order to remain connected to myself?" That question changes everything, because people-pleasing says, "Abandon yourself so others will stay." Wisdom says, "Remain true to yourself and let love meet the real you." You do not have to earn your right to exist through endless sacrifice. You do not have to prove your worth by exhausting yourself. You do not have to disappear to deserve love. You were never born to become a servant to everyone's expectations. You were born to live with an open heart and a rooted soul, to love others without abandoning yourself, to care deeply without carrying what was never yours to carry. And perhaps healing begins the moment you finally understand this truth. The people you love are not your responsibility to save, but the person you have neglected for years, the person within you, that person is your responsibility. And it is time to bring them home. Distraction from others prevents self-discovery. One of the easiest things in the world is to become an expert on everyone else's life. It requires very little courage. You can spend hours thinking about what other people are doing, what they think about you, why they acted the way they did, whether they still care, whether they are happier than you, whether they are ahead of you, whether they approve of your choices. You can analyze their words, replay their actions, study their behavior, imagine conversations that never happened. Create stories inside your mind, and before you realize it, an entire day has passed, then a week, then a year, then perhaps an entire lifetime. Meanwhile, one person remains a mystery to you. yourself. Buddhist wisdom teaches that awareness is the beginning of freedom, but awareness requires attention, and wherever your attention goes, your life follows. If your attention is constantly directed outward, you lose the opportunity to know what is happening within. You become familiar with everyone else's struggles, but unfamiliar with your own wounds. You understand everyone else's emotions, but ignore your own sadness. You know what other people need, but cannot answer a simple question about yourself. What do I need? For many people, this question feels surprisingly difficult, not because they do not have needs, but because they have spent years training themselves not to notice them. They became caretakers, problem solvers, peacekeepers, observers. They learned to monitor everyone else's emotional weather while forgetting that they had an inner world of their own. Over time, looking outward becomes a habit, and sometimes it becomes an escape, because focusing on other people can distract us from meeting ourselves. It is easier to obsess over who hurt you than to ask why their opinion had so much power over your peace. It is easier to analyze someone else's mistakes than to examine your own fears. It is easier to talk about other people's lives than to ask yourself whether you are truly living your own. It is easier to ask, why did they leave? Than to ask, why have I abandoned myself? It is easier to wonder, why don't they understand me? Than to wonder, do I understand myself? These questions require honesty. And honesty can feel uncomfortable, because self-discovery is not always peaceful. Sometimes it reveals grief. You discover dreams you buried years ago because someone convinced you they were unrealistic. You uncover parts of yourself that learned to stay hidden in order to be accepted. You realize how often you chose safety over authenticity, how often you betrayed your own truth just to avoid rejection. You begin to notice how tired you really are, how lonely you have felt, how long you have been pretending that everything is fine. Many people avoid this inner meeting because they fear what they might find. But Buddhism reminds us that suffering continues when we refuse to look directly at reality. Healing begins through awareness, not avoidance. The truth is that most people are strangers to themselves. They know their responsibilities, their schedules, their obligations. But they do not know their hearts. They cannot remember the last time they asked themselves, what makes me come alive? What kind of life do I actually want? What brings me peace? What values matter most to me? What parts of myself have I neglected? What dreams have I quietly abandoned? When you stop asking these questions, life becomes mechanical. You wake up, you perform, you meet expectations, you repeat routines, but somewhere deep inside, something begins to ache. Because the soul was never meant to live on autopilot. There is a reason why so many people achieve what they thought they wanted and still feel empty. They built a life without first discovering who they truly were. Success without self-awareness often feels hollow, because external achievements cannot replace inner connection. No amount of praise can heal the pain of self-abandonment. No amount of attention can replace the relationship you have with yourself. Buddha often encouraged people to observe their minds, to sit quietly, to notice, not to judge, not to criticize. Simply to notice. Notice what creates suffering. Notice what creates peace. Notice the thoughts that repeatedly arise. Notice the fears that influence your choices. Notice the desires beneath your distractions. Because within observation lies understanding, and within understanding lies transformation. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot understand what you never examine. You cannot discover yourself while running endlessly from yourself. Imagine spending your entire life living with another person, sharing every moment, every joy, every fear, every loss, every dream, yet never taking the time to know them. That person is you. You have been with yourself since the beginning. You have witnessed every heartbreak, every disappointment, every quiet victory, every hidden tear, every silent prayer. And yet, perhaps no relationship in your life has received less attention. You may know exactly what comforts others, but do you know what comforts you? You may know what motivates other people, but do you know what inspires you? You may know what breaks someone else's heart, but do you know what breaks your own? The journey inward is not selfish, it is necessary. Because the more connected you become to yourself, the less dependent you become on outside noise. You stop seeking your identity in other people's opinions. You stop searching for worth in comparison. You stop asking others to tell you who you are. Instead, you begin discovering it for yourself. You learn what aligns with your values. You recognize what drains your spirit. You notice when something feels right. You notice when something feels false. You begin making choices from awareness instead of fear. And slowly, a beautiful relationship begins to form. The relationship between you and yourself. For perhaps the first time in years, you stop treating yourself like a stranger. You become curious, patient, compassionate. You stop demanding perfection. You start listening. You begin honoring the person you have overlooked for so long, and something remarkable happens. The less obsessed you become with everyone else's lives, the more alive your own life begins to feel. Colors appear brighter. Moments become richer. Peace feels possible, because your energy is no longer scattered across 1,000 distractions. It returns home, home to your breath, home to your values, home to your truth, home to the person you were always meant to know. Perhaps the greatest discovery you will ever make is not hidden in another person, not hidden in approval, not hidden in achievement. It is hidden within the quiet depths of your own awareness, waiting patiently for your attention, waiting for your honesty, waiting for your return. So stop asking everyone else to explain who you are. Stop looking outside for answers only your heart can give. Turn inward, sit in stillness, listen carefully, because beneath the distractions, beneath the fears, beneath the roles you have played for so long, there is a person within you who has never stopped waiting to be known. And perhaps the most important relationship you will ever heal is the relationship you have with yourself. You lose the present moment when you live through other people. One of the saddest ways people lose themselves is not through one great tragedy. It happens through absence. They stop being present in their own lives. Their body remains here, but their attention lives somewhere else, inside other people's minds, inside imagined conversations, inside future worries, inside past disappointments. They are physically present, but emotionally elsewhere. Have you ever noticed how often your mind leaves the present moment? You are sitting with your family, but wondering what someone thinks of you. You are eating a meal, but replaying an argument from yesterday. You are walking beneath a beautiful sky, but worrying about tomorrow. You are listening to someone speak, yet part of your mind is trying to gain approval, avoid judgment, or predict rejection. The present moment quietly passes by, unnoticed. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering often arises because the mind resists where life is actually happening. Life exists here, in this breath, in this moment. in this ordinary day, but the mind constantly travels elsewhere. It says, what if they are upset with me? What if I fail? What if I disappoint them? What if they stop loving me? What if I said something wrong? What if they never understand me? Slowly, your life becomes occupied by imagined realities. You start living through assumptions instead of experiences. You become so focused on managing other people's thoughts that you stop noticing your own existence. You become an observer of life rather than a participant in it. Think about how many precious moments are lost this way. How many sunsets pass unnoticed because your mind is trapped in comparison? How many conversations are missed because you are trying to be liked? How many opportunities for joy disappear because you are busy replaying old pain? How many beautiful mornings begin with anxiety about things that have not happened? How many nights end with exhaustion from carrying fears that never became reality? Most people believe they are tired because life is difficult. Sometimes they are tired because their minds never come home. They spend all day traveling through worries, judgments, and imaginary scenarios. Of course they feel exhausted. The human heart was never designed to carry the weight of every possible future. It was never meant to solve problems that do not yet exist. It was never meant to control other people's thoughts. Yet many people try. They try to predict disappointment before it happens. They rehearse conversations that may never occur. They create defenses against threats that do not exist. They fight invisible battles inside their minds while missing the life unfolding directly in front of them. Buddha understood something profound. The present moment is all we truly have. Yesterday exists as memory. Tomorrow exists as possibility. But this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this is life. And perhaps one of the greatest tragedies is realizing that we spent our lives waiting for life to begin. Waiting until everyone approved. Waiting until we achieved enough. Waiting until anxiety disappeared. Waiting until circumstances became perfect. Meanwhile, life was already happening. The laughter of loved ones, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of rain against the window, the smell of morning tea, the comfort of silence, the feeling of your feet touching the ground. Small moments, ordinary moments, moments that appear insignificant until they become memories you wish you had noticed. How many times have you said, "I'll be happy when," "I'll relax when," "I'll enjoy life after," "I'll focus on myself once everyone else is okay"? But that day rarely comes, because the mind always creates another condition, another requirement, another reason to postpone peace. This is why presence is so powerful. Presence interrupts the endless chase. It reminds you that this moment does not need to earn your attention. It already deserves it. When you truly become present, something extraordinary happens. The mind slows down. The noise softens. The fear loosens its grip. You notice things you once overlooked. The way your child smiles. The way your loved one's voice sounds. The beauty hidden in ordinary routines. The miracle of simply being alive. You begin realizing that life was never hiding from you. You were simply too distracted to notice it. Many people are waiting for extraordinary moments to justify gratitude. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that awakening often happens within ordinary experiences. Washing dishes, drinking water, taking a walk, feeling the wind, watching the sky change colors, breathing deeply. These moments become sacred when attention returns to them. Presence transforms routine into wonder, but living through other people steals this gift. When your mind constantly asks, "What do they think? What are they doing? What if they leave? What if they judge me? You lose touch with what is actually happening. You stop hearing your own laughter. You stop noticing your own needs. You stop experiencing your own life. It is impossible to fully live while constantly trying to manage other people's perceptions, because attention is limited. Whatever receives your attention shapes your reality. If you give all your attention to fear, fear becomes your world. If you give all your attention to comparison, inadequacy becomes your identity. If you give all your attention to others, you slowly disappear from your own experience. But if you bring your attention back to this moment, everything changes. You begin responding instead of reacting. You begin appreciating instead of rushing. You begin experiencing instead of imagining. You begin living instead of merely surviving. This does not mean ignoring the future. It does not mean avoiding responsibility. It simply means refusing to abandon the only moment where life can actually be touched. This one, the breath you are taking right now, the beating of your heart, the awareness within you reading these words. Perhaps peace has never been as far away as you imagined. Perhaps it has been waiting beneath the noise, beneath the overthinking, beneath the endless concern about what other people think, waiting in the simplicity of this moment. The truth is that nobody knows how many ordinary moments remain. One day, today's routine will become yesterday's memory. The people you love will grow older. Seasons will change. Time will continue moving forward, and you will never receive this exact moment again. So stop postponing your life. Stop sacrificing today for fears about tomorrow. Stop giving yesterday permission to steal your peace. Come back. Come back to your breath. Come back to your body. Come back to this moment. Come back to the life unfolding in front of you. Because while the mind is busy living everywhere else, your real life is quietly waiting for your return. And perhaps awakening is not about finding something new. Perhaps awakening is simply remembering to be fully here, fully alive, fully present, before this beautiful, temporary moment slips away unnoticed. Boundaries are acts of self-respect. One of the greatest misunderstandings in life is believing that boundaries are selfish. Many people hear the word boundary and immediately feel uncomfortable. They imagine rejection, distance, coldness. They fear becoming unkind. They worry that saying no means they are disappointing others. So instead of protecting themselves, they continue sacrificing themselves. They continue giving access to people who constantly drain them. They continue tolerating behavior that wounds their spirit. They continue ignoring their own limits. And they call it love. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to look deeper, because a life without boundaries is not compassion. It is confusion. It is forgetting that you, too, are a human being worthy of care. Many people were never taught how to create healthy boundaries. They were taught how to be useful, how to be agreeable, how to avoid conflict, how to keep everyone happy, how to put themselves last. As children, they may have learned that love had conditions. They learned that being good meant staying quiet, being easy to manage, being available, being understanding no matter what. Over time, these lessons became identity. They became the person who always said yes, the person everyone relied on, the person who answered every message immediately, the person who cancelled their own plans to rescue others, the person who never asked for anything, the person who gave and gave and gave, until there was almost nothing left. From the outside, people admired them. You are so kind. You are always there for everyone. You never complain. You are so selfless. But inside, another reality existed. Exhaustion, resentment, loneliness, the quiet pain of feeling unseen. Because when you constantly abandon your own needs, something inside of you begins to ache. A part of you whispers, "What about me? When will someone notice that I am tired? When will someone ask what I need?" But often, the answer never comes. Not because people are cruel, but because you have taught them that your limits do not exist. You have shown them that your time is always available. Your energy is always available. Your peace is always negotiable. And perhaps the hardest truth is this: the boundaries you refuse to set become the burdens you carry. Every time you say yes when your soul says no, you betray yourself a little more. Every time you tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict, you teach yourself that your dignity is less important than other people's comfort. Every time you silence your truth because you fear disappointing someone, you abandon the person within you who desperately wants to be heard. People often believe that love means endless sacrifice. But love without wisdom becomes self-destruction. Buddha spoke often about the middle way: balance, not indulgence, not deprivation, not selfishness, not self-erasure. Balance. True compassion includes everyone, including yourself. You matter too. Your energy matters. Your peace matters. Your time matters. Your emotional well-being matters. You cannot continue pouring from an empty cup and expect not to collapse. Imagine carrying a heavy bucket every single day. At first, you manage. Then your arms become tired. Your back begins to ache. Your body starts giving signs that it needs rest. But instead of setting the bucket down, you continue carrying it. You smile. You reassure everyone that you are fine, until eventually you can no longer stand. This is what life without boundaries feels like. The exhaustion is not sudden. It accumulates. One ignored need at a time. One forced smile at a time. One unnecessary sacrifice at a time. One unspoken truth at a time. Until you wake up one day wondering why you feel so disconnected from yourself. Boundaries are not walls designed to keep love out. They are doors that teach people how to enter your life with respect. They protect what is sacred: your peace, your values, your dignity, your emotional health. Without boundaries, resentment quietly replaces compassion. Because the heart cannot continuously give what it no longer possesses. Eventually, even the kindest people become bitter when they repeatedly ignore their own humanity. This is why boundaries are not acts of rejection. They are acts of responsibility. They say, "I care about you, but I cannot carry what belongs to you. I love you, but I cannot abandon myself to keep you comfortable. I want to help, but I also need rest. I understand your pain, but I am not responsible for fixing your entire life." These truths can feel uncomfortable, especially if your identity has always been built around being needed, because many people confuse being needed with being loved. They believe that if they stop overgiving, people will leave. If they stop rescuing everyone, they will become unimportant. If they finally say no, they will disappoint those they care about. And perhaps some people will become uncomfortable. Not everyone benefits from your healing. Not everyone celebrates your boundaries. Some people only knew the version of you that never had limits, the version that never complained, the version that tolerated everything, the version that made life easier for them. When you begin changing, they may resist. They may call you selfish, distant, different. But healing often disappoints people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It may mean you are finally doing something right, because healthy relationships do not require self-betrayal. Healthy love respects honesty. It respects limits. It understands that two whole people can care deeply for one another without sacrificing their identities. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say, "I cannot do that," without explaining yourself for hours, without drowning in guilt, without believing that you have failed. You are allowed to walk away from conversations that destroy your spirit. You are allowed to distance yourself from constant negativity. You are allowed to stop chasing people who repeatedly show you that they do not value your presence. You are allowed to choose environments that nourish your soul instead of draining it. These choices do not make you selfish. They make you wise. Because wisdom understands that what you repeatedly tolerate becomes your reality. The people who truly love you may not always understand your boundaries immediately, but genuine love learns. It adapts. It grows. It does not demand access to parts of you that are no longer available at the expense of your well-being. Perhaps one of the most powerful sentences you will ever learn is this: "I can be compassionate without sacrificing myself." Read those words slowly. You can be loving without abandoning your needs. You can be generous without exhausting yourself. You can be understanding without accepting disrespect. You can be kind without saying yes to everything. You can care deeply without carrying burdens that were never yours. You can disappoint people and still be a good person. You can choose yourself and still have a beautiful heart. Because boundaries do not separate you from love. They reconnect you with yourself. And maybe that is what self-respect truly means, not believing you are more important than others, but finally understanding that you are not less important either. For too long, you may have stood at the end of your own priority list, waiting patiently for everyone else's needs to be met before acknowledging your own. But your life is happening now. Your heart needs care now. Your peace deserves protection now. Perhaps the person who has been asking for your attention all these years is not another person. It is you, the tired version of you, the overlooked version of you, the version that kept giving while silently hoping someone would finally notice their pain. Maybe it is time to notice. Maybe it is time to listen. Maybe it is time to honor the life within you with the same compassion you offer so freely to everyone else. Because the moment you begin protecting your peace without guilt, the moment you begin speaking your truth without apology, the moment you stop abandoning yourself to earn acceptance, you do not become less loving, you become whole. And perhaps the strongest boundary you will ever create is this: never again choosing other people's comfort at the cost of losing yourself. Your life begins when you return to yourself. Perhaps the greatest tragedy in life is not failure. It is not rejection. It is not losing money. It is not making mistakes. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is reaching the end of your life and realizing that you spent most of it becoming who everyone else wanted you to be. You fulfilled expectations. You played the roles assigned to you. You carried responsibilities. You tried to avoid disappointing people. You sought approval. You chased acceptance. You became who others needed you to become. But somewhere in that process, you forgot to ask one important question: what happened to me? What happened to the dreams that once made your eyes light up? What happened to the version of you that laughed freely? What happened to the person who spoke honestly before fear taught them to stay quiet? What happened to the child who was curious, creative, and alive before they learned that being accepted was more important than being authentic? The truth is that many people do not lose themselves in a single moment. They lose themselves gradually, one compromise at a time, one act of self-betrayal at a time, one unspoken truth at a time. one people-pleasing decision at a time, one abandoned dream at a time, until eventually they look in the mirror and recognize their face, but not themselves. They have built a life, yet they no longer feel at home within it. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about seeing clearly. It is about remembering. Remembering what fear made you forget. Remembering what comparison convinced you to abandon. Remembering what constant distraction buried beneath years of noise. Perhaps the person you have been searching for all this time was never outside of you. Perhaps the peace you wanted was never hidden in another person's approval. Perhaps the love you desperately sought from others first needed to be offered inward, because the journey back to yourself is not about creating a new identity. It is about removing everything that was never truly you, the masks, the expectations, the borrowed beliefs, the endless need to be understood by everyone, the pressure to constantly prove your worth, the exhausting habit of becoming smaller so other people feel comfortable. Little by little, you begin letting these things go, and beneath them, someone beautiful remains. You, not the version built from fear, not the version built from survival, not the version built from comparison. The real you, the one who has quietly existed beneath all of it. The return to yourself is not dramatic. There are no fireworks, no sudden transformation overnight. Often, it begins with very small choices. You start listening to your own needs. You become honest about what hurts. You admit when you are tired. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop forcing yourself into places that require you to betray your values. You stop chasing people who repeatedly show you that they cannot meet you with the love you deserve. You stop asking everyone else to tell you who you are. And slowly, your life changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. For the first time in years, you begin trusting your own voice. You choose what aligns with your heart instead of what earns applause. You allow yourself to rest without guilt. You laugh without wondering who is watching. You express your thoughts without needing universal agreement. You begin living from authenticity instead of fear, and there is a freedom in this that cannot be described. Because the greatest prison was never other people. It was the belief that you needed permission to be yourself. You begin realizing that not everyone will understand you. Some people may disagree with your choices. Some may misunderstand your growth. Some may become uncomfortable when you stop shrinking. And yet, you continue. Because peace becomes more valuable than approval. Truth becomes more important than performance. Self-respect becomes stronger than fear. Buddha taught that attachment creates suffering. One of the deepest attachments many people carry is attachment to identity. The identity of being the good one, the strong one, the responsible one, the helper, the successful one, the one who never disappoints anyone. But healing often asks us to release these labels. Because you are more than the roles you perform. You are more than what you provide. You are more than what people expect from you. Your existence has value beyond usefulness. You deserve love even when you are resting. You deserve compassion even when you make mistakes. You deserve peace even when life is imperfect. You deserve to exist without constantly earning your place in the world. Imagine how different life would feel if you stopped trying to prove your worth. Imagine waking up each morning without asking, "What must I do so people approve of me?" Imagine asking instead, "What would it mean to honor myself today?" Perhaps honoring yourself means speaking honestly. Perhaps it means resting. Perhaps it means letting go. Perhaps it means finally pursuing the dream you buried years ago. Perhaps it means forgiving yourself. Perhaps it means walking away from what no longer nourishes your soul. Perhaps it simply means breathing deeply and remembering that you do not have to become anyone else to deserve love. The return to yourself requires courage, because authenticity is not always rewarded immediately. Sometimes people prefer the version of you that abandoned themselves. Sometimes the world celebrates performance more than truth. But eventually, a choice must be made. You can continue living according to expectations that leave you empty. Or you can begin the sacred work of returning home, home to your values, home to your intuition, home to your peace, home to your humanity, home to the person who has been waiting patiently beneath years of fear. The beautiful truth is this: no matter how long you have been lost, you are never too far gone. You can begin again. At this very moment, you can choose differently. You can listen more carefully. You can forgive yourself for the years spent seeking outside what only existed within. You can stop punishing yourself for what you did to survive. You can stop judging yourself for the ways you learned to protect your heart. You did what you knew. You sought belonging. You wanted love. You wanted safety. There is nothing shameful about that. But now, awareness invites you into something deeper. It invites you into freedom, because the life you are searching for does not begin when everyone understands you. It does not begin when everyone approves of your choices. It does not begin when fear disappears completely. Your life begins the moment you decide that losing yourself is no longer an option. It begins when you stop abandoning your truth to gain acceptance. It begins when you stop chasing identities that do not belong to you. It begins when you choose to sit beside yourself instead of running away. It begins when you trust your own heart enough to follow its wisdom. And perhaps awakening is not about becoming enlightened. Perhaps awakening is remembering who you were before the world convinced you to forget. Remembering your worth, remembering your voice, remembering your peace, remembering your humanity. Remembering that beneath every wound, every fear, every expectation, there has always been a self, untouched by comparison and untouched by approval. A self that has never stopped waiting for your return. So if you have spent years focusing on everyone else, if you have lost yourself trying to be enough for others, if you no longer recognize the person you have become, know this: it is not too late. You have not missed your chance. You have not ruined your life. You have not gone too far away. You can return. You can begin again. You can come home to yourself. And perhaps that is the most beautiful journey a human being can ever take. Because the moment you truly return to yourself, you stop merely existing, and you finally begin to live. If these words resonated with you tonight, do not rush past them. Sit with them. Because this was never just another video. It was an invitation. An invitation to pause, to breathe, to look honestly at the life you have been living. How much of your life has been shaped by fear of disappointing others? How many dreams have you postponed while waiting for permission? How many times have you ignored your own needs to keep everyone else comfortable? How many years have you spent becoming who others wanted you to be while slowly forgetting yourself? You do not have to answer these questions with guilt. You do not have to judge the person you have been. You survived the only way you knew how. You sought love. You sought belonging. You sought acceptance. Like every human being, you simply wanted to be seen. There is no shame in that. But awareness changes everything. Because once you see the pattern, you no longer have to remain trapped inside it. You can choose differently. You can stop abandoning yourself. You can stop measuring your worth through other people's opinions. You can stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for your spirit. You can stop asking the world for permission to become who you already are. The journey back to yourself will not always be easy. There will be moments when choosing your peace feels unfamiliar, moments when setting boundaries feels uncomfortable, moments when saying no fills you with guilt, moments when your old habits call you back into familiar suffering. Be patient with yourself. You are not trying to become someone new. You are remembering someone you forgot, the person beneath the fear, the person beneath the masks, the person beneath the endless need for approval, the person who has quietly waited for you through every season of your life. And maybe that person has been worthy of your love all along. So tonight, before you move on with your day, make one small promise to yourself. Listen to your own heart a little more. Trust your own wisdom a little more. Protect your peace a little more. Choose yourself a little more. Because the more you return to yourself, the less power the outside world has to define who you are. And one day, you will look back and realize that the life you were searching for was never found in becoming everything for everyone else. It was found in finally coming home to yourself. If this message spoke to something deep within you, let me know in the comments. I choose myself. Those 3 words may be the beginning of a completely different life. And if you found comfort, clarity, or strength through this reflection, subscribe to the Inner Buddha Code and join this growing community of people learning to live with greater awareness, deeper peace, and a kinder relationship with themselves. Because in a world constantly telling you who to become, we choose to remember who we truly are. Until next time, be gentle with your mind, be patient with your healing, protect your inner peace, and never forget this: the person you have been searching for in the approval of others has been waiting quietly within you all along.